All right, welcome to another episode of Charles Weekly Party. I believe this one's 2109. So, before we get started, let's roll the intro. All right. So, first and foremost, this is going to be a slightly different episode. So, I'm going to go ahead and call it a sort of special episode because it's definitely a little bit different. So, over the course of my podcast, I've talked about in each episode, I've talked about architecture and technology. So I start off with a piece of architecture, and then I finish off with a piece with technology bits and pieces. So sometimes there's one thing I talk about wide in technology, and other times there are three things. However, this week's going to be a little bit different because today I'm going over Apple's recent spring-loaded event. So what that means is I'm going to be devoting the time in this episode to recapping what happened during the event. And I'll also be going and talking about my feelings about some of the stuff that they have announced. So, to start with, they opened up the show talking about their podcast's application. Now, what they've said is that they're going to have, for podcasts, you can have sort of exclusive content available to people who would like to pay and support your podcast. And I find that to be a very sort of interesting concept. So obviously for some creators, this is going to be a good route for them. And for others like myself, right now this isn't a route I'm going to be going down. So what they didn't say is that, I did a little bit of research into it, Apple is going to charge, I believe, $20, I believe it was a year, but could be monthly. So don't necessarily quote me on that, but I remember it was $19.99 that they want to charge. And then of whatever fee that gets placed, Apple, I believe, gets 30% the first year and 15% in subsequent years. So my problems are as follows. So looking at it, I'd have, for being a podcast creator, I would have to either create some exclusive content for people who wanted to pay for that, or I'd have to go and spend money to be able to create the bonus content and possibly have some of the listeners sign up. For larger podcast creators, that could be a very useful option, but then you also have the 30% take. So I believe Spotify is actually trying to throw one at Apple by actually, offering it for no cut taken from the content creator. So right now, I'm going to stay where I'm at with the podcast. So maybe in the future that could change, but right now, I'm happy where I'm at. And if you decide you do want to support the podcast, there's a way to do that straight from the anchor.fm/CharlesWeeklyParty page. So moving on, the Purple Podcasts app would look really nice on, I don't know, maybe a purple iPhone. That's right. Apple decided that bringing in some purple would be nice for the iPhone. So looking at it, I think it has its charms, although I think it's a little bit too much of a lavender for my personal taste. But that's just me. So for some people, the purple iPhone is going to be an absolute wonder, and they're going to go for it. Now, personally, could I see myself with, if I had to choose a color, personally I'd lean more towards the red or blue. They seem to be a little bit more flavorful for me. But purple, I guess it's a combination of the two, so could I rock it? Possibly. But hopefully for the people who do enjoy it, there will be incentive to switch to purple. Now, losing phones is common, as is losing keys or wallets. And when I say losing, I mean, I'm generally speaking around the house or the apartment or the dorm or wherever you happen to be stationed. Losing phone or keys always happens at the worst time. Keys can be especially troublesome because, well, let's put it this way, when you lose the darn things, you have to try and find them, and always happens. The only time you really end up realizing it is right when you need them the most. So when you're running late for a meeting, going out the door, you can't find your keys. So now you can play a little game of tag with the keys or your wallet by putting an AirTag in it. So Apple has announced the long-awaited AirTags, which will work natively with the Find My application, so that you can attach an AirTag to whatever you desire, and you can use that to figure out where it is. Plus, if you happen to have an iPhone 12 or maybe a purple iPhone 12, you can you can utilize the U1 chip in it to go and get precise directions once you're within a certain range of the AirTag to find it. So it can say, move this way, go a little bit more to your left, and it'll be about 5 feet away from you. But that feature drew a little bit of controversy, or at least outcry from Tile. So before the AirTag was there, you had tiles. So you could put those in your wallet, attach it to your keychain, and life's just peachy. But Tile is ever so slightly ticked that Apple has made the use of the U1 chip that allows for that precise direction only to the AirTags. So Tile is really not thrilled because in their eyes, it is an anti-competitive move. And to some degree, I do have to agree with them because Apple is saying, okay, we have this chip that people paid for, but we're only allowing our products to use it. So I do think that the use of the U1 chip should be made available to companies like Tile to be able to work with the tags just fine. I'm sure there are a couple of reasons why it would be a good idea for them not to share that sort of pathfinding chip, but we'll have to see how it ends up going. So the AirTag is one of the few I'd say right now it is the only Apple product that has a user replaceable battery. So the battery lasts for around a year, and then after a year you can replace the battery. And I think they said that there is a way of telling that the battery is running low to make sure that you have time to change the battery before the battery dies and you lose it. And I've been there before. You have little key finders attached to different sets of keys. Works just fine, batteries die, all of a sudden you can't find your keys, you can press the button, but nothing happens. So it would be interesting. The only sort of issue I could possibly see happening with AirTags is if you attach them to enough things, it can give it. In the Find My app, you could have a lot of different little things to look for, so that when you do need to find one thing, you have to go through a list to find the one thing that you're looking for to then go and ping that. But nonetheless, they have their ups and they have their downs, and they also have a cute little detection feature to make sure that they're not used as little mini tracking devices. So the way that works is if you have, let's say you have the iPhone, you have your AirTags, you have an AirTag in your wallet or your handbag, and you have an AirTag on a suitcase. If you go, let's say you have an extra AirTag in your pocket and you decide to put it with someone else's stuff to try and keep an eye on them, the AirTag would be able to recognize that it has been separated from its owner and united with a different one. So the moment that when that happens, the AirTag will, I believe, start chiming. So what that means is if someone decides to try and track you with an AirTag, before long, you'll find out that someone's tried to do that. So I think that's a useful little thing to have, although if it relies on someone having an iPhone, then that could work out poorly. The other thing where I could see it sort of backfiring, let's say you put one in your wallet or your handbag. And then someone takes your handbag. Now, the AirTag will have just recognized that it will recognize that it's been separated from its owner but united with a different one. So, I can't remember the exact set of operations that it uses, but basically there's one step before it actually starts chiming. So I think that it notifies the owner, hey, this has been separated from you, before it actually starts creating a bell. But I could see easily that if someone takes something with an AirTag and the AirTag starts chiming, now let's say someone stole your purse, they hear a little thing chiming from inside to say, hey, I'm not with my owner. Guess what that just did? Now the person who took the thing with the AirTag knows to find the AirTag and take it out of there. And of course, if it's making noise, they'll be able to find it quite easily. So I can see both sides of that. I could see it working out well, and I could also see it backfiring quite painfully. So cost-wise, it is $29 for one, and then $99 for a 4-pack. And if you order them online, you can get them, I believe, engraved with basically anything that'll fit on there, and you can even get emojis engraved on them. So it's interesting. So next, and yes, I am going in order of the way Apple announced everything at their event. Apple announced an upgrade to the Apple TV 4K. So for starters, instead of operating off of whatever chip that they had previously, the upgraded model will have a A12 Bionic chip, and that's supposed to make it a little bit better for a couple of purposes. So to start, they're including 4K HDR high frame rate, so that when you're doing HDR content, you can have as high of a frame rate, I believe, as the original media supports. And they tossed in a new remote, which, not having experience with using the previous one, I can't say whether I'd like it better or worse. But from what I've seen, that there are quite a few people who are happy about the remote upgrade. So another thing that they tossed in is advanced AirPlay, so that if you have, once again, going back to the iPhone 12s, if you have one of the iPhone 12s that can shoot in the HDR, then you can AirPlay content that's HDR straight to the Apple TV without losing as much of, or without having quality stumbles. So, and last little feature that sort of caught my eye is that you can now color grade it if you have an iPhone 12. So utilizing the, I believe, light sensor that they have in the front-facing camera, if you put it into color grading mode, you put your iPhone against the TV where it tells you to, with the screen facing the screen, and then it's able to figure out what color, how your TV is displaying colors, and then adjust the picture based on that. So I recognize that there are some people who weren't thrilled about that news, because especially with professional color grading tools costing a pretty penny, having anyone able to do that sort of makes it a little bit more difficult, or makes it more painful, I guess. But the caveat with that is the color grading would only apply to your Apple TV 4K. So it wouldn't calibrate the monitor or the TV itself, it just calibrates that one little thing. So where I'm going with this is that if you spent money on getting a professional color grading tool, don't worry, your money is still worthwhile, because when you hook up a computer to it, you can still do color grading where the iPhone and TV 4K won't be able to help you out there, because the iPhone just communicates with the Apple TV to inform it on how to adjust. The other thing, I haven't seen this in action or seen it compared to a professional color grading tool, but it would be interesting to see the two side by side. But personally, I think the professional color grading tool is also going to be able to get a more accurate piece, whereas the iPhone color calibration, I think, is going to make the picture better, but it's not going to make it color perfect, so to speak. As nice as it was for Apple to open up with those three things, now is when the event really started getting interesting. So I can't say the podcast piece was expected. I don't know. Like I said last episode, I'm not necessarily a big fan of looking into the rumors. The AirTags had been rumored for, I think, the last two events at least now, and possibly expected for previous ones. And the purple iPhone 12 I don't think was predicted. But could be wrong. Not worried about it because I'm not one to... I'm not big on the, rumors. I gotta know what's gonna happen at the event before the event. I like the event being a pleasant surprise. So when Apple announced the new iMacs with the M1 chip, that was interesting to say the least. So it was anticipated. I had heard about the possibility of colors being instituted in the iMacs, but I didn't know that was once again a rumor. But for some people, I think this is going to be very pleasant. And my only thought on it is that the blueberry is back. So the iMac is now going to be available in 7 colors and not just your plain silver and black. So also to accurately represent the colors, they have 2 different levels of the iMac. So one starts at $12.99, the other starts at $14.99. And for the lower model, you only have available pink, yellow, green. Wait, nope. Did I say pink? Yeah. Pink. No, not yellow. It's pink, green, blue, and silver. So you have 4 colors available if you go down the less expensive route. But if you opt for the more expensive one, then you have the full range with pink, orange, yellow, and purple added. So as I previously mentioned, the new iMacs feature the M1 chip, which has performed pretty well. So the I/O on the back gets a little bit interesting. So for those a little bit less technically experienced, basically the ports that are present on the back. So the lower model has 2 USB-C Thunderbolt ports. So they function as USB-C, but they also have Thunderbolt capabilities. And you have a power plug. And the higher version has an additional 2 USB-C ports on it, as well as a feature that I think is pretty interesting. And I'm saying that because that was a very pleasant surprise, because when I first saw that, I was rather irritated because Apple went and removed when I was looking at it, I said, they removed the Ethernet. And for some people, Wi-Fi works out just fine. Watching movies, or just doing a little bit of schoolwork, or doing a little bit of or doing some work from home things. Decent Wi-Fi, you'll be just fine. However, for quite a number of people, Ethernet is a very important little thing to have. And I do end up falling under the category of needing and wanting Ethernet. Just because of a few different little advantages it provides. So what they did with the Ethernet port is rather than having it in the back of the computer, it's now with the power brick. And yes, there's a power brick now for the iMac. And I'll mention my thoughts on that in just a second. But the Ethernet port is now located on the power brick, which allows the one cable that attaches magnetically to the back of the iMac to carry both power and Ethernet. So, interestingly enough, I had my mixed feelings because I know right now power and Ethernet don't always go in the same sort of sentence, and it's interesting because there is something called power over Ethernet, which means that the Ethernet cable is able to carry power sufficient of powering up a device. So for a lot of VoIP phones, you're able to, in an office setting at least, you only need to plug in an Ethernet cable, and the Ethernet cable powers up the phone. So I think it probably has something to do with direct current versus alternating current, because with the alternating current, I'm not necessarily 100% sure of all of the scientific interference pieces with it, but I know I made the mistake of routing on my desk a power cable and an Ethernet cable right next to one another. And what I found out was that when I changed the amount of power going through the power cable, because that was for a, what's the word for it? It was for an outlet strip. When I turned something off that was hooked up to the power strip while watching a video, it killed the video stream. And it took it about 15 seconds to render. Took it about 15 seconds to get back to the point where I could actually watch stuff. So the reason for that was, I'm thinking, because the amount of alternating current running through the wire changed enough, it caused interference with the cable next to it. So personally, I don't think the power is going to be changing as much on that, so I'm curious just to see where it'll go. And I'm sure, though, if Apple is promoting this, that they have taken that into account and somehow worked with it. So the gigabit Ethernet will be available, I believe, if you get the higher model, or as an available upgrade if you get the lower model. So the other things, the aesthetic things on the piece, are that they made the bezels a little bit thinner. So now instead of a 21.5-inch screen, you have a 24-inch screen, which I believe viewable area ends up being 23.5 inches. But my problem is more of the fact that the bezels are white. Yeah. For some people, the white bezels will work just fine, and some may actually enjoy it over the traditional black bezels that are around a screen. But I'm not as big of a fan on things, because especially when you're working with trying to use a screen in the dark. So if you go to a movie theater, you'll notice that basically everything is as dark as possible, and that's for a reason. So if I'm using the iMac to, let's say, watch a movie in the dark, that white bezel would ruin the experience. So another thing that I have mixed feelings on the aesthetic of is the chin that they have on the iMac. So in this particular version, the chin does not have an Apple logo on it, whereas previous iMac and iMac Pro models did. So for me, it turns it, instead of a bar to hold the logo on, now it's just a bar that's sitting on the bottom of it that really doesn't aesthetically make sense. But obviously, this isn't going to, this is just my opinions on how it looks. And whether or not I like it is my problem. So I guess the short version is, if you're not a big fan of it, then I wouldn't necessarily go and pick one up. Lastly, the big thing about the new iMac is that it is quite a bit thinner than previous ones. So instead of having the last major design model that's been carrying over is the thin edges but wider middle. So front of the screen is flat, but the back had an arch to it. So now that sort of bend is gone, and it's just a flat Mac, so to speak. I'm not going to comment on all of the other little things that they talked about with the speakers, because they're facing down. That gives you a certain level of audio amplifying nature. But for some people, that'll be nice. The last thing that I like that they brought to the new iMacs is that you have the capability of, or you have the 1080p webcam. So for a while now, the webcam has been at 720 pixels, but I mean, if you want really good audio quality, if you want really good video quality, then you'd best have the thing in 1080 pixels at the minimum. So I can understand not necessarily wanting to raise it above 1080, depending on what you're recording or what you're doing. But still, having 1080 should have been a minimum a while ago. It's not something new that's coming to webcams. I've had a 1080p webcam now for quite a bit, and it's come in handy more often than you might think. But that's where we are. Now, if your concern with getting the new iMacs is that you wouldn't have a color matching keyboard or mouse, well, spoiler alert, they exist. So Apple refreshed the Magic Keyboard and mouse to feature the same sort of subdued colors that are on the front and base of the iMac. So basically, the subdued pieces having a hint of the color that's very prominent on the back. And to the Magic Keyboard's credit, they have brought in Touch ID. So it's able to securely communicate with the iMac to convey your fingerprint in a safe way. Now, not sure 100% as to how they process the fingerprint, but it should be done securely. even though it is wireless. Last but not least, the Magic Mouse still charges from the bottom. And personally, I have heard of a lot of people go and knock that design quite often. But personally, I think it's actually a reasonable thing to do. Almost everybody knocks the Magic Mouse for charging from the bottom. And for those of you who don't know, before the Magic Mouse charged from the bottom, which is the Magic Mouse 2, the first Magic Mouse, which I actually have, it has user replaceable batteries on the bottom. So I put rechargeable batteries in there, works just fine for me. But when they switch to rechargeable batteries, you plug in a little lightning cord on the bottom of the mouse to charge the thing up. So I have to actually defend Apple on their choice to do this because it logically does make sense. So the top of the Magic Mouse is basically a smooth piece of glass. Whether or not it is actually glass, I'm not 100% sure, but you get the idea. So having that there and having the gestures that you can use on the Magic Mouse, I think it would actually ruin the look if you put a charging port on the front or the back of it to be able to charge it while using it. The whole point with putting it on the bottom is to keep that seamless look, but also guess when you can charge your mouse? Overnight. Now, I know charging things all the way to 100 and then all the way down isn't necessarily a good thing, and you can use, if you want to avoid doing something like that overnight, then there are ways to go about minimizing the charging that you're doing. So for my devices, I use a wall timer so that it turns the outlet on turns the thing on and charges the device for about 2 hours and then shuts it off until the next morning. So that it gives the device some juice, but it doesn't charge it all the way. So similar with that, if you have the Magic Mouse, just charge it when you know you're not going to use it for a while. It makes life easy. That way you don't have to worry about, and keep an eye on the battery life. Same way you keep an eye on your phone's battery life. The thing usually warns you when it's getting a little bit lower. It'll say, hey, the battery's below 20%. You might want to think about charging it. And having some of these devices, 20% battery life still means I have a decent amount of life left in it. But once again, here we are. So if you do get the Magic Mouse, that's just my suggestion. Yes, it charges from the bottom, but all you need to do it when you're going down. Let's say you're going to sit down for dinner. Charge it for an hour. So when you come back from dinner, you have some juice. It's not all the way. Works out perfectly. Now, last and definitely not least, the new iPad Pros. So Apple actually had a very interesting way of showing it, and I will admit it had me on the edge of my seat when they were doing that. The moment I saw it, I said, I was in sort of an state of utter disbelief. But the M1 chip that is heavily impacted the performance that you're able to get out of a Mac is now in an iPad Pro. I think that's just amazing. So the basic features of the iPad Pro haven't necessarily changed. So on the 11-inch, it still has the Liquid Retina display and all of that fun stuff. But with the M1 chip, now both models are able to have Thunderbolt. Both models are able to get up to 5G if you get the cellular option. And you can get up to 2 terabytes of storage in the iPad. But if you opt for the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, then you get a couple of cute little features added. And I think what was most notable for me is the Liquid Retina XDR display. So Apple's $6,000 sort of monitor has some of their technologies now existent in the iPad. So you're not capped at using them only if you can afford a $6,000 monitor and the $1,000 stand to put it on. You would have to go, and you can now get it for basically $1,100 on the iPad Pro. And I think that's really amazing. So personally, I think the iPad Pro is definitely getting along there, but it's now bringing up a big sort of issue. And I think Apple's kicking the can down the road as much as they can right now. But whenever you kick a can down the road, you'll eventually need to pick the thing up. Or someone else might run past you and pick it up. Or in this particular case, other companies have already picked up the can. So Mac notably does not have touchscreen. iPad, which has had touchscreen, now has basically Mac capabilities in it. And it is limited based on the operating system. So I think Apple is going to need to figure out something to do to change the way they're operating the iMac. Did I just say iMac? Change the way they're operating the iPad. Because yes, it has more processing capability. Yes, it has a Thunderbolt port on it. But it is a pain in the neck to use with some of the other features. So yes, you can use a mouse, but I've used a mouse with an iPad before. It does have its bugs. It's not as nice as I'd like it to be, and they don't give me the option to change that. So right now, I have my outline on a laptop that has a touchscreen. So the iPad, right now, the iPad Pro, especially if you get the floating keyboard for it, is basically a touchscreen MacBook. It has the horsepower of it. It has horsepower that you're putting in desktop computers. It has touch capability. You can use it with the Apple Pencil. If you get the Folio, you have a backlit keyboard, and you have a trackpad. Those are all features that you can get, almost all features that you can get on a MacBook Air. So you can get all the capabilities of an Air or of a MacBook Air, except with the touchscreen. But it's still capped at iPadOS. Yes, iPadOS is more capable than iOS, and yes, I'm very glad that they made that sort of separation. But I think they need to go and take it a step further and either really soup up iPadOS or just make a make a version of Mac OS that works on the iPad. So where they're going to go with this, I don't know, but they're going to need to face that sooner or later because now they basically have a touchscreen laptop. The problem is it's your software capped on it. So with all of that being said, I was very glad about quite a few of the things that Apple announced. It's made me excited for the future, and I'm looking forward to seeing where everything ends up going. Hopefully, later in the year, they'll be able to fix some of the I/O limitations that exist with the M1, and they'll be able to maybe bring out an even higher grade chip because let's just say that professionals, you already have a pretty professional chip. If you're going to try and sell something that's a little bit more pro grade, you're going to need to upgrade it. I think they have something in the works because space gray wasn't an option for the iMac colors. And personally, space gray is something I really like. So I think that they may actually have another sort of iMac Pro or similar in the works. But where that'll end up going, I've yet to find out. So with all that being said, I'm kind of happy that the blueberry's back, I guess. That's the only color of iMac that I could actually see myself getting of the line. But I still wouldn't be able to get over the white bezels. And personally, it'll be interesting to see how people end up taking to these new products. And as per usual, just opens up different innovations for Apple. It's a glance at what the future might have in store, and it's something to really look forward to. So if you enjoyed this episode of Charles Weekly Part T, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And next week we'll be back talking about architecture and technology, which I'm really looking forward to. And if you want to go to anchor.fm/CharlesWeeklyParty. You can see all episodes as well as pick up the link to your favorite podcast platform. You can interact with the podcast by leaving a voice message, or you can support the podcast. Also, if you enjoyed, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts if that's the platform you're using to listen to it. And if you'd like to actually see me deliver my weekly party, you can watch the action on YouTube. And spoiler alert, last week's, episode 2108 was done in 4K. Sitting down here again, I've realized that, once again, I've shot the episode in 4K resolution, but because of render time, I'm going to be cutting it down to simply 1080p. So if you want to see an episode of Charles Weekly Part T in 4K, that was last week's episode, and maybe if there's demand for it, I can shoot future episodes in 4K. But until next time, I'm going to be taking off and seeing where my colorful party gets me this week. So I know it's springtime. You have iMacs with spring colors, and now you have a purple iPhone to match your lilacs. So, take care, have a good week, and roll the outro.